جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله؟ فقلت نعم، إن جدك وأخاها تحت الكساء. فدان الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده، السلام عليك يا من اقتراه الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافي أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فقال معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم، ها هو ما ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا سيدي وخليفتي وصاحب لواء، قد أذنت لك. فقال علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء فقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بدعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أقاد أبي رسول الله بطراف الكساء وأمي بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال لهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحمتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم، عدو لمن عداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال العميل جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيتي نبوتي ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معكم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهابت العميل جبرائيل فقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحيات والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله. فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فقال جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل بيتي ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذي بعثاني بالحق نبي واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر قبلون هذا في محافل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا محبين إلا ونزلت عليهم رحمات وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي الثاني يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر قبرون هذا في محافل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا محبين فيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجات إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال لا علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وجل اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
دعویٰ ہے میرا نار جہنم سے بری ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں. دعویٰ ہے میرا نار جہنم سے بری ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں. سو جائے جو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی. سو جائے جو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی. بگڑا ہوا ہر کام بنا لیتا ہوں خود ہی. سو جائے جو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی. بگڑا ہوا ہر کام بنا لیتا ہوں خود ہی. میں بندہ سرکار حسین ابن علی ہوں میں پنجتنی میں بندہ سرکار حسین ابن علی ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں. اور دیوانہ حیدر ہوں میں عشق سے سرشار. دیوانہ حیدر ہوں میں عشق سے سرشار. عباس کا نوکر ہوں شہیدی کا زادار دیوانہ حیدر ہوں میرے عشق سے سرشار عباس کا نوکر ہوں شہیدی کا زادار پھر کیوں نہ کہوں میں کہ مقدر کا دھنی ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 پھر کیوں نہ کہوں میں کہ مقدر کا دھنی ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں محتاج نہیں ہوں میں زمانے میں کسی کا محتاج نہیں ہوں میں زمانے میں کسی کا صدقہ مجھے ملتا ہے صدقہ مجھے ملتا ہے بہت آل نبی کا محتاج نہیں ہوں میں زمانے میں کسی کا صدقہ مجھے ملتا ہے بہت آل نبی کا اس در کا بھکاری ہوں دو عالم کا غنی ہوں میں پنجتنی پنجتنی اور دعویٰ ہے میرا نار جہنم سے بری ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں یہ بات ہوا کرتی ہے آندھی کی زبان میں یہ بات ہوا کرتی ہے آندھی کی زبان میں جو پنجتن پاک کے دشمن ہے زماں میں یہ بات ہوا کرتی ہے آندھی کی زبان میں جو پنجتن پاک کے دشمن ہے جہاں میں نام و نشان ان کا مٹانے کو چلی ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں دعویٰ ہے میرا نار جہنم سے بری ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں سو جائے جو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی سو جائے تو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی بگڑا ہوا ہر کام بنا لیتا ہوں خود ہی سو جائے جو قسمت تو جگا لیتا ہوں خود ہی بگڑا ہوا ہر کام بنا لیتا ہوں خود ہی میں بندہ سرکار حسین ابن علی ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں میں پنجتنی 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 ہوں پر محمد والے محمد
نبی کے دین میں سیاست کا کاروبار نہ کر نبی کے دین میں سیاست کا کاروبار نہ کر سوال مجھ پہ عقیدے کا بار بار نہ کر میرا تو یہ عقیدہ ہے جو دشمن اہل بیت ہو تو اس پہ بے شمار کیے جا مگر شمار نہ کر
بے شک بے شک اللہم صلی علی محمد اور حال ہم سنائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے حال ہم سنائیں گے جب امام محفلیں سجائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے بام و در سجائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے جشن ہم منائیں گے جشن ہم منائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے اور زخم ہے ابھی تازہ مکہ اور مدینہ کے شام و کوفہ کرب و بلا ہم بھلا نہیں سکتے السقیفتائی غم غیر سے نہیں پہنچے جتنے دکھ اٹھائے ہیں ہم نے کلمہ گویوں سے ایک ایک چکائیں گے ایک ایک چکائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے شک ہے جن کو اللہ کے عدل اور عدالت پہ مسنب نبوت پہ سیدہ کی عصمت پہ مرتضیٰ کی احمد سے موت سلمیابت پر جن کو شک ہے بارہ پر بارویں کی غیبت پر سب ہی مار کھائیں گے سب ہی مار کھائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے
محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.
ایک سورہ فاتحہ استاد
سبت جعفر ابھی مکمل مرحلہ قیامت کا ہے ظہور پر موقوف انسداد جور و جفا ہے ظہور پر موقوف انتقام گئے ببلا ہے ظہور پر موقوف اہتمام روز جزا ہے ظہور پر موقوف ہم سکون پائیں گے ہم سکون پائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے اور نام پر صحابہ کے کام فاسقوں جیسے نام پر صحابہ کے کام کافروں جیسے نام پر صحابہ کے کام مشرکوں جیسے اور نام پر صحابہ کے کام منکروں جیسے سب ہی منہ چرائیں گے سب ہی منہ چرائیں گے جب امام آئیں گے بام در سجائیں گے
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Fatiha pढ़ लें। बिस्मिल्लाह।
Now I'd like to invite Sheikh Shabir Kirmani Sahib to come on the member. From Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wajjid farajahum. Bare digar salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
It's a poem I wrote some years ago. Some of you may have heard, I was in Chicago a few weeks ago, I recited there, some of you may have heard it there, otherwise inshallah it'll be for you. There's some fadail and then there's some masaib, but inshallah I've been asked to recite it, so I'll recite it. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
It's called I Don't Know. I Don't Know. I don't know if everything is meant to be known or not. See, I don't know if the Quran wants me to understand the law or the huruf. And I don't know if the ha and mim are for Hussein or Muhammad. And I don't know if the ta and ha are for Turab's father or Hussein. And I don't know if there's a difference between the awwal and the awsat. And I don't know if in front of Akbar the sun looked like the sun or a firefly. And I don't know if in front of Abbas the moon looked like the moon or a nightlight to the eye. And I don't know which family is honored more in the ahadith or the Quran. And I don't know which screams their victory more, the aqama or the azan. And I don't know which brings the day, the sun or their eyes cracking open at dawn. And I don't know what Hussein used to light the tents at night, a candle or the face of John. And I don't know if Zainab, you realize who your brother is or not. And I don't know if you realize who gave more life to death, Jesus or Hussein. And I don't know if you realize who's done more to alleviate pain, medicine or Hussein. And I don't know if you realize who gave more brightness to the sky's hue. And I don't know if you realize who gave more serenity to the meadow's dew. And I don't know if you realize who gave more sweetness to the river's stream. And I don't know if you realize who single-handedly refined God's crop's cream. And I don't know if after Ashura those clusters on the galaxy's face are stars or tears. And I don't know if after Ashura those drops on the cloud's cheeks are rain or tears. And I don't know if after Ashura those waves in the oceans are waves or tears. And I don't know if after Ashura the spray before the ocean's nose is ocean mist or tears shedding tears. And I don't know if after Ashura there was anything left for Hussein to give or not. And I don't know if after Ashura anyone expressed more love than Hussein or not. And I don't know if after Ashura there is any greater proof of God or not. And I don't know if the cloud of prestige has poured more honor on prophets or the sister of my Imam. And I don't know if on the wrecked ship in the tragic sea, despite the storm, one could remain so poised or calm. And I don't know if when you spoke you were sheltered like Mary by a palm of dates or God's own palm. And I don't know if they're still perspiring in labor to reimburse your loan. That is the Quran and Islam. And I don't know if evil will ever plant its defeat like Yazid, after defeat like Yazid or Saddam. And I don't know how she entered the court of the sin of Umayyah. And I don't know if she called the name of her father or brother beneath her breath. And I don't know if there was any other unwalked avenue left to torment or harass. And I don't know how many steps she took in front of the likes of Ibn Ziyad or As. And I don't know if there was any other unwalked avenue left to torment or harass. And I don't know how many steps she took in front of the likes of the son of Ziyad or As. And I don't know if she would have rather stepped on fire or pieces of broken glass. And I don't know if the more enraged would have been Akbar or Abbas. And I don't know if her eyes cried more or her heart. And I don't know if when she got home what pained her more, the thirst or the quenching of it. And I don't know what pains her more, her lack of scarf or her followers' lack of it. And I don't know what hurt more on Zainab's skin in Sham, the stones or the stairs. And I don't know who cried more, Ya'qub or the king of Sujood. And I don't know if he ever lost his sight or cared between the difference between day and night. And I don't know what Sajjad wanted to give more, a shroud or a scarf. And I don't know if the shackles were heavier or the bones beneath it. And I don't know if the dungeon was brighter or the little grave within it. And I don't know if between Sakina or Asghar who wanted to go home more. And I don't know if when the rain tried to finally quench their thirst, did it drizzle or pour. And I don't know which wind hurt Sughra more, the wind of Karbala or Sham or Kufa. And I don't know who cried more, the king of Najaf or the resident of the green dome in Medina. And I don't know which gemstones were cut more, Sakina's heart or Abbas's body parts. And I don't know whose grave was smaller, Sakina's or Abbas. And I don't know if Zahra cried more at Hussein's death or his birth. And I don't know if more matam is done in the land or the seas or the heavens or the earth. And I don't know if any can close their child's grave but a wali or imam. And I don't know how Hussein closed Asghar's or Sajjad closed his sisters. And I don't know if when this news finally reached Medina, who fell first, Bint al-Hussein or Bint al-Hizam. Bint al-Hizam is al-Banin, Bint al-Hizam al-Kilabiyya. Fatima Bint al-Hizam al-Kilabiyya. And I don't know if when the news reached Medina, who fell first, Bint al-Hussein or Bint al-Hizam. And I don't know if the walls cried more of Baytul Maqdas or Baytul Haram. And I don't know if a body alone is somebody or not. And I don't know if a body alone is somebody or not. And I don't know if Farwa ever went home or not. And I don't know if Layla ever went home or not. And I don't know if Rabab ever went home or not. And I don't know if Zainab ever went home or not. And I don't know if anyone ever again called Layla or Farwa or Rabab or Zainab mother or not. And I don't know if anyone ever again called Medina home or not. Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Surah Al-Mubarakat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى صدق الله العلي العظيم زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد my respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman here in Milwaukee or across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question, what are we commemorating here? We're told there's a moment in time where Rasulullah is with his companions and he's sitting in a gathering with his companions. When he's sitting in a gathering with his companions, at a moment in time he looks at his companions and he says, Halil Iman. What is faith? What is belief? He says, Halil Iman illa al-hub wal-bughd. He says, what is faith? What is Iman? Except love and hate. At that point in time, the companion said, Ya Rasulullah, can you please explain this? Can you please elaborate on this? That you've said, what is Iman except, what is belief? What is faith? That is a mu'min, is based on Iman, the belief that you and I have in our hearts. What is Iman except love and hate? Ya Rasulullah, we understand love. We understand to love you, to love the Ahlul Bayt, to love the Quran, to love good. But hate? How is hate part of Iman? Rasulullah goes on to explain. He says that religion, Iman, belief is nothing except love and hate. Love for those things which are good. Love for the Ahlul Bayt. Love for Rasulullah. Love for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Love for the Ahlul Bayt. Love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Love for doing good. Love for promoting good. But hate for what? Hate for all of those things which are evil. Hate for all those things of injustice. Hate for someone suffering. All of those things. He said religion, deen, Iman in particular, is encapsulated in between these two things. That is love for that which is good and hatred and separation from that which is not good, that which is evil. Therefore, tonight when we come to commemorate Eid-e-Zehra, this is encapsulated between these two elements. That is love for that which is good and separation from that which is not good. That is, hatred is one term that we may take on board, but what we're truly saying is separation from that evil, separation from that negativity. That is what we are here to commemorate. There are so many things which we are here to commemorate tonight, and I will mention and lay out what are all those things and how they come together so that we commemorate Eid-e-Zehra. And what does it mark? On one level, it is the culmination of the Azah of this season. Azah never ends. There is no end to the Azah. At every moment, the remembrance of Sayyid al-Shuhada should be alive. Based on the narrations that say very clearly, إِنَّ لِقَتْلِ الْحُسَيْنِ حَرَارَةٌ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ لَا تَبْرُدْ أَبَدًا. The narration says, verily, for the remembrance of Hussein and the martyrdom of Hussein, there is a flame that is in the hearts of the believers. And the riwayah and the narration says, it never extinguishes. Remember this, my young and old alike. Remember that connection to Sayyid al-Shuhada and the Ahlul Bayt in particular, but Sayyid al-Shuhada specifically, never let that flame go down. Sometimes that flame gets very big, sometimes that flame gets small. But the flame, according to the narration, never extinguishes. The main thing that you and I need to remember is never let that flame go out and become small. I say this in our environment where we are seeing dynamic shift. I have some messages to give you tonight and tomorrow that we need to make clear. Our young ones are suffering tremendously, and I need to highlight that to you. But my young ones especially, when they go off to college and university, many times, this happens in Christianity, this happens in Judaism and other faiths as well. The graph of religion oftentimes, when people are going off to college, is when it declines. Why? Because they're going off to a different environment where they don't have their community necessarily. If you have a community there, build a relationship. But my young ones, remember this. No matter where you go to Harvard, go to Princeton, go to Stanford, go to the best universities. But when you go there, don't forget on a Thursday night or at any time, once, just say 3 times, take your hand to your chest and say, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. That connection I have seen with my own eyes. Some of the people who went down some of the most difficult paths and darkest avenues, they came back because of that connection to Imam Hussein. This is a treasure that you and I cannot fathom. You are just hearing these beautiful words in this manqabat that was recited. And those words I often tell people to reflect on. That is, you heard that the most valuable things that you and I possess is our love of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Is this just poetry, or is there a meaning and a basis behind it? Therefore, there's a lot to say tonight. I will encapsulate it in the following, and what we'll look at tonight, inshallah, in the brief moments that we have, is what is the journey of the Husseini movement? What is the journey, and the journey through which the azah and the fadail and the merits of the Ahlul Bayt have reached us? Through which journey has it gone to come to you and I, and how valuable is it? Number 2, what was the environment of the various Imams? And what was the common goal amongst all of the Imams? From Imam Ali to Imam Askari and Imam Zaman and all the Imams in between, was there a common approach and a common goal that all of them had? At the next level, what is Eid-e-Zehra? What are we commemorating here? What do the riwayat say? What do the narrations say? And why is it so important to commemorate this day? That this is not just a custom and a ritual, but this is part of our belief system, our aqidah, and why it's so important. What are the different versions and the narrations as to what the Ahlul Bayt say? What are the traditions with respect to the likes of people such as Mukhtar and other people? What is their role in this? What was Imam Sajjad's view on these personalities? What is the relationship of this night with Fatima Zahra Salamullahi alayha and her position? All of these things we'll look at tonight in the brief moments, and then whatever is remaining, inshallah, we'll cover tomorrow as well. We have a lot to discuss. Wherever you are, here in Milwaukee or across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, send a salawat on Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At the first level, one thing that needs to be charted and one thing that needs to be understood, oftentimes when we commemorate, which we've been doing for 2 months and 8 days, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his movement and the Husseini movement, the Zainabi movement, we need to do this and we need to do more. But what is the meaning of it? Oftentimes, many times what happens in our communities is we see the movement of Imam al-Hussein and our blood is Husseiniya. But we think when Imam Hussein alayhi salam rose, that means we are also supposed to rise the way Imam Hussein did every time. That means if Imam Hussein took a sword and went to the battlefield, that means I must do that all the time. But we have to stop here for a moment. Because if we say this sometimes undermines inadvertently what the other Imams did. Because Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan, their movements are the same. There's no difference. But one of them stood and rose on the plains of Karbala, where the other signed a peace treaty. First of all, we oftentimes don't do justice to Imam Hassan. Because we say Imam Hassan just wrote a peace treaty right away. That's not entirely true. Imam Hassan first, he arranged an army of 40,000. When Muawiyah was rising and Muawiyah was saying, I'm the Khalifa and all of these things in Sham, Imam Hassan created an army of 40,000. And he put one group at Maskan and one at Madain. He stationed them at these 2 locations. And he said, I am ready to fight. And of that, he took a battalion of 4,000 from the 40,000, and he sent them with a commander to go towards Muawiyah in Sham, in Levant, which is modern-day Syria and Lebanon and Jordan. He sent him that way. And he said something. This was like a proxy. You know, proxy in our world, the big forces, they want to fight, but they don't fight directly. They sent a proxy, or they fight inadvertently, indirectly. So the Imam was showing, Imam Hassan is the strategist of Ali Muhammad. He exposed what the Umayyads were doing, Banu Umayyah was doing. He said, look, I'm sending a battalion of 4,000 towards Sham, the people of Sham, towards Muawiyah, with one general. And he said, General, listen, I need you to make sure you stay loyal. Do not become disloyal and be bought out by Muawiyah. Of course, the Imam knows, but he's trying to expose and help people understand what is going on here. That general went, and what happened? Sure enough, Muawiyah paid him, and when Muawiyah paid him, he got bought out. And then Imam Hassan, when he heard the news, he came out of his tent. When he came out of his tent, he addressed the army in front of him, Imam Hassan. He said, look, this battalion of 4,000 that I sent with the general that went towards Muawiyah, he was not loyal. He got bought out and he went towards the other side. Will you be loyal or not? Decide amongst yourselves. Imam Hassan went back in the tent. When Imam Hassan went back in the tent, what does the riwayah say? The riwayah says as soon as Imam Hassan went back in the tent, the army, the people began to fight amongst themselves. There were factions and groups that formed. To the extent that the riwayah says, as soon as these groups formed, one of the groups went into the tent of Imam Hassan and they attacked Imam Hassan. They took a dagger and they put it in the leg of Imam Hassan alayhi salam. So what am I saying? Why am I saying this? Imam Hassan was ready to fight, but the people did not support Imam Hassan. The people were not loyal to Imam Hassan. At that point, then Imam Hassan wrote the Sulh, the peace treaty. But what did he do? He exposed everything that Muawiyah was doing. He made it clear. He said, look, you need to stop the cursing of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You need to give the money to the shuhada of Siffin, Jamal, Nahrawan. You need to make sure that all of the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, the Shi'as, are not persecuted. Every single thing was violated. On top of that major thing, after you do not appoint anyone after you to be the Khalifa. Everything was violated. After the death of Imam Hassan, the continuation of the La'an on Amir al-Mu'min. For 90 years it continued. Furthermore, Hijr bin Adi al-Kindi, you know, in Syria, when they dug up his grave, he was killed after this period. He was a follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam. They violated everything. But sometimes when we say that the Sulh and the peace treaty is the Sulh Hassani, it's actually the Sulh of Hassanain. Why? Because when Imam Hassan left this world and he was shaheed and martyred, Muawiyah took on that position. For 10 years, Imam Hussein did not rise. He stayed there. Because it was the requirements of until all of the elements of the treaty were violated, then Imam Hussein rose. When Muawiyah appointed Yazid, then Imam Hussein alayhi salam rose at that point in time. So what am I saying? Why am I sharing this? One level, I'm giving you data points so you can derive this and make these connections. First data point. I'm trying to explain to you what is the common message and theme of all of the Imams. Now, Imam Hussein we know. Now let's come to the time of Imam Sajjad. If you know the history, after Karbala, the oppression of Yazid did not stop. Why? Because some people in our world have come forward and tried to defend Yazid. Can you imagine? But have they not read what happened in Medina afterwards, what happened in Mecca afterwards? It becomes so clear. What happened in Medina after the tragedy of Karbala, the people of Medina heard about what happened in Karbala and they began to rise and they began to revolt. When they began to revolt, they rose and they said, we will fight and we will restore the rights of the Ahlul Bayt. Marwan, who was the governor of Medina, he got kicked out of town. When he was kicked out of town, Yazid heard the news and he sent an army towards Medina, the city of the Prophet. When he sent this army pillaged Medina and destroyed Medina. When it destroyed Medina, they used the mosque of Rasulullah as a stable. You know, a stable where you keep horses? This is what they did. And they did things I cannot even mention from the minbar. And 1 year later, 1,000 children were born in an illegitimate manner. There's many things I can't mention. This is what happened. It's called Waqat al-Harra. It happened in Medina. After that, when we come to, they didn't stop there. Yazid went and pillaged Mecca, Allah's city, the city of the Kaaba afterwards. This all happened. But why did I share this with you? When these revolutions were happening, when the people of Medina rose and Yazid crushed them, and the people of Mecca rose and Yazid destroyed them also, did Imam Sajjad support or outwardly come forward and support those revolutions? He did not take part in them. He did not undermine them necessarily. But he did not pick up a sword and say that I'm leading this revolution. Go to the time of Imam Baqir. Go to the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Were they fighting? They used the University of Medina. You go during the time of Imam Kazim, he's in prison. You go during the time of Imam al-Rida, he's the Wali al-Ahad or the heir apparent of the rulers. It seems like completely opposite to his father. Seems like, that's the key word. You go next, other eras in time. What is the common thread? What you understand and what I understand from this movement is based on the zaman and makan, based on the time and space. The approach of the Imams was different. Depending on what era and time they were in, they used a different approach. Imam Hassan had one approach, Imam Hussein had one approach, Imam Sajjad had one approach. It seems to us that they're different, but they're united in one thing. What do the ulama say? What is the common thread that unites all of the movements of the Imams? It's this. The ulama say the common goal between all of the Imams is Hifzuddin wa Hifzuddima. Hifzuddin wa Hifzuddima meaning what? Preserving the deen and preserving the dima. You know, Hafiz of the Quran. Hafiz of the Quran, they preserve the verse of the Quran. The same way the Imams were doing Hifzuddin wa Hifzuddima. Deen meaning what? They were preserving and protecting the religion. And dima means what? Dima means blood. Blood of who? Blood of the people who follow the religion. If Imam Hassan alayhi salam did not do what he did, you and I, maybe we could not call ourselves Shias today. Because of the animosity and how much pressure there was on Shias and how much difficulties there was. Now you may say, why did Imam Hussein alayhi salam, why did he go to the battlefield? Because the deen itself was on the line at that time. Because didn't Imam Hussein alayhi salam himself say, do you not see that Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi al Munkar is not promoted anymore in society? Do you not see that the halal of Muhammad has become the haram of Muhammad? That religion has become upside down? Do you not see this? The religion was on the line. But what Imam Hassan did, it saved the lives of the Shia. Why? I always say this and I remember this. And this is what I was referring to and alluding to. The most valuable thing that you have is not your degree, although that's important. It's not your money, although those are important. The most valuable thing that you have is your iman. Why? There was a time in the history, and go read the history, and I remind you that the city of Baghdad, read the history of Baghdad, the walls of Baghdad, you and I often mention this, when we build a city, they used to build a city and they used to put a wall around it to protect the city. When they built the walls of Baghdad, you and I, we take cement, the powder, and we put water with it and we blend it. They used to drain the blood of a Sayyid Hassani in the cement. And that's how they lined the walls. Furthermore, during this time, they used to take Sayyid Hassani and take them alive between the walls and close them, and they would suffocate between the walls. I'm giving the example of Sayyid Hassani because this is what the riwayat say, but don't think the issue was any easier for any other Shias. In fact, the narrations say that there was a certain fragrance that used to come from the Sadat, the line of Fatima al-Zahra. Imam al-Kadhim did dua that Allah removes this fragrance. Why? Because they were being killed left, right, and center. Nobody was there. Everyone was being killed, butchered. But here's the key point that I want you to remember. When your ancestors, my ancestors, our ancestors left from the Arabian belt, went to Persia. When they left Persia, they went to India and subcontinent. And then from there to the rest of the world. What did they take with them? They didn't take their property. They didn't take any of that. They took their books of Aqidah in their hearts and their Iman in their hearts. In their hands and hearts. Books in their hands, Iman in their heart. So if you and I, as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we end up coming forward and saying, you know, my religion, my deen is not that important for me. It's a secondary thing, tertiary thing. It would be like spilling water over all the difficulties that our ancestors have gone through. For the sake of Ahlul Bayt, for the sake of Ali Muhammad. Therefore, what is the common thread between all of the Imams? The common thread between all of the Imams is Hifzuddin wa Hifzuddima, preserving the religion and preserving the life of those. That's why the Ahlul Bayt were not there to maximize death. They were there to minimize death, to save lives. And whatever the time and space required, they did accordingly. It's very important for us to know a few things in terms of what I'm talking about in terms of time and space. Allow me to explain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There are certain things that you and I need to know in terms of the time and space, in terms of what are the issues that we are facing. The issues change based on time and space. I often give this example. It's very important to understand what's going on in our world. I often give this example of Pakistan. Pakistan is a very interesting country geopolitically. You don't have to be from there. I'm just giving an example. Why is it interesting geopolitically? And many people from the Indian community will find parallels in what I'm about to say. The concept is similar. Pakistan has the second highest population of Shias and second highest population of Sunnis under one roof. That is, after Indonesia, the second highest population of Sunnis are in Pakistan, and after Iran, the second highest population of Shias are also there. Now, as a Muslim country, that's the key word, because India also has a huge population of Shias and Sunnis. As a Muslim country, why am I saying this? Stay with me here. Oftentimes, in the practicing community, I'm saying something that may be a bitter pill to swallow, but I don't know when I'm going to be here next time, and I don't know how long I'm going to be lecturing for. I remember I did my PhD in engineering at my university, and we'd get people who come from Pakistan who are our colleagues, people who come from India, people who come from Iran. And it was very interesting. You know, I met one of my friends who was a colleague actually of mine, and we were in the same class in engineering, and I remember I met him the first time, and I said, look, what's your name? And he told me his name. I said, very well. And I said, where are you from? He said, Iran. I said, very nice. Where in Iran? He said, Mashhad. Mashhad, mashallah, Imam al-Radha, wow. He said, no, I don't believe in any of that. That's all nonsense. So at that moment, I was younger than I am now at that time, and I said, look, somebody can be in the vicinity of Imam al-Radha and still not have the ma'arifah of Imam al-Radha. So don't think that just because you're in a particular place, it's a, by the way, of course there are people who live by Imam al-Radha who would die for Imam al-Radha there. That doesn't mean that you blanket statement everyone there. Similarly, you may find people in the vicinity of Imam Ali alayhi salam in Najaf, but they may not have that level of ma'arifah, maybe it's possible. So just being somewhere in proximity does not necessarily mean anything. We also used to see people who used to practice back home, but they would come here and they'd stop practicing, believe it or not. I've seen this numerous times. And then you would find some people who didn't practice back home, but they come here, they start practicing more. So you see, it's not a bilateral thing. It's not a this or that, and it's not black and white. Different people have different approaches. I'm saying this because we're living in an environment where for the indigenous population of young Muslims who are born here, we're losing a lot of people. So I want to share a study with you. I think this has come time. Why am I here? Stanford University. Stanford University needs no explanation. Stanford University, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, MIT, Stanford. These are typically the top 5, and they go back and forth in the top universities in America. There's a few more, the Ivy Leagues. Stanford, although it's not Ivy League, but it's better than many Ivy Leagues in rankings. I remember it as clear as day. I was giving the Jummah khutbah in Orlando, Florida, at Masjid al-Hay. Masjid al-Hay is a beautiful masjid in Orlando, a Shia masjid. I hope you all see it. It's about $25-30 million project. It's beautiful. So I'm standing there and I vividly remember looking over the crowd. In the second khutbah of Salatul Jum'ah, you are supposed to talk about current affairs and what's going on in our world. And oftentimes we talk about what's going on abroad, although that's important. But what we must also talk about is what's going on in our world, in our neck of the woods. And I mentioned there, this happened about 12 weeks ago. And I stood there and I said, look, the rate of self-harm, in particular, the rate of suicide amongst the young African American community in America is skyrocketing. That is, young African American men are taking their lives in America at a higher rate than ever before. And then I mentioned there that we need to speak out for this because Allah may ask me on the Day of Judgment, you were living in America at this time, why was an oppressed or minority in your country willing to not live and take their life rather than live in your world? What was going on with them? And I mentioned there that today this is members of the African American, young African American boys, male. Tomorrow that may be young Muslim, young brown men and young brown girls. Tomorrow it may be. I had some idea, but believe me, Allah is my witness. 7 weeks passed. Perhaps 7 weeks did not even pass. I was standing in front of the same congregation with my heart bleeding. Because I said that day I told you about has already come. Stanford University, July 2021, a few months ago, this year, put out a study that looked at the rate of suicide, that is people taking their own lives, amongst young people of different religions. They looked at the Jewish community, the Protestant community, the Catholic community, and the Muslim community. And they looked at what is the rate of attempted suicide amongst these groups. They found that the attempted rate of suicide amongst the Jewish community was 3.6%, just under 4%. The rate of attempted suicide amongst the Protestant community was 5%. The rate of attempted suicide amongst the Catholic community was 6%. And the rate of attempted suicide amongst the Muslim community in America was 7.9%, almost 8%. But the data is not done yet. If you know your statistics, you know you have to adjust for factors. When the researchers adjusted for factors, they found that the attempted rate of suicide amongst Muslims was twice that of the next group. 6% for Catholics, 12% for Muslims after adjusting for factors. The question that you and I need to ask is why? What's going on here? Young people, young Muslims are taking their lives or attempting to take their lives at unprecedented rates. This is not just statistics, these are lives. That means if there are 100 youth in your community, 12 of them have attempted. This is something very serious here. Because I've been there and I hope and I pray no one ever has to go through that. I've been there when parents have to deal with it. When a parent has to deal with their child taking their life, the parent is already dead, although they may be breathing. It's the most difficult card anyone can be dealt. Look, we need to be very sober about these things and understand what's going on in the psychology and the psyche of a young person. Why did I give the example of Pakistan? Why did I give the example of Iran or Arabia, for example? The issues that are being faced in places across the way, across the Atlantic, across the water, are different than the issues you and I are facing here. And we need to adapt to the issues that we are facing. There are two communities abroad. You have a practicing community and a not-practicing community. And oftentimes when people come here, you begin to realize what the reality is. I gave you the example. Some people who weren't practicing begin to practice, and some people who were practicing stop practicing. And some people continue. It happens. Why am I saying this? Because in the practicing community, oftentimes, by the way, these debates have already started. We think sometimes we're immune. Remember this. Learn letter 31 of Nahjul Balagha. Imam Ali writes a letter to his son. The ulama say it's either Imam Hassan or Muhammad Hanafiya. There's a debate. But nonetheless, it's written to his son. It's advice. And in that, he says, my son, study the pages of history. I studied the pages of history. Imam Ali is saying this. Imam Ali doesn't need to study the pages of history. He's telling you and I. He says, I studied the pages of history up until the point it was as if I was walking amongst the ruins of past civilizations. And I saw what brought them good and what brought them harm. Although I did not live as long as they did, I learned what brought them good and what brought them harm. What is the Imam saying? You know these archaeologists who go to the pyramids and other places and they study what brought them good and what brought them harm. What was their life? The Imam is saying study to learn the pages of history. Because look, we have a treasure in the Ahlul Bayt, but never forget this. The Jewish community and the Christian community before us in America, they said nothing can happen to us, we have Jesus. They lost their religion, many of them. We look in a lot of our communities, many of our communities are purchasing what used to be churches. Why? Sometimes the congregation got bigger, rarely. We see this in the South sometimes. Sometimes the congregation got old and there was no one to take over. And so they sell it off. Does it not happen? Nonetheless, at that time, the Jewish community, what happened with them? They said, we are God's chosen people. We have Moses. Nothing can happen to us. It happened to them. We as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we have the Ahlul Bayt. It's a huge treasure. But if we do not utilize them, the same thing can happen to us. We need to be very sober about these things to understand what's going on. I've been seeing this in my travels to the UK and coast to coast in the United States and in Canada. Parents tell you these things. You, by the way, I will mention something to you. You may think that this issue, for example, of suicide is not going on in communities. This year, I won't mention where I was. A brother came to me afterwards after I mentioned this. He said, Sayyid, thank you so much for sharing this. My brother has attempted, he said to me, my brother has attempted suicide 4 times. He said, but that was not as difficult as dealing with the ghibat and the gossip that the community did about my family. You know, sometimes imagine someone's already going through a difficult situation, we make it worse for them. The narrations say that Rasulullah, his companions, some of them, they would not speak. They used to fill their mouth with stones. They used to fill them, and when they would remove the stones, they asked them, why is your mouth full of stones? He said, we heard from Rasulullah that the amount of sins that someone can do just with their tongue is enough to lead them to the hellfire. Now stop here. Imam Askari, who we commemorated last night. Imam Askari says that how wretched and how terrible and how bad is the one who has 2 faces and 2 tongues. Imam Askari says. 2 faces and 2 tongues meaning what? The one who in front of your brother, you speak good of him, but behind his back you speak evil of him. And when your brother, Imam Askari says, when your brother, something good happens to him, you get jealous and envious. And when he goes through a difficulty and a difficult time overcomes your brother, you abandon him. You see, until we say that each child in our community is like my own child, each person in the community is like my own family member, we will not progress. Because I would never do ghibat and say bad things about my child to others, would I? But why would I do it about someone else's? You know, many of the youth tell me that they stopped coming to the mosque because of that. You know, because people have difficult phases. People go up and down. You know, people say that you would imagine that the graph of your iman goes always positive up. No, we're human beings. You have up days, down days. Some days you have more iman, some days less days. Don't you have a certain feeling? What's your feeling when you go to Najaf? What's your feeling when you go to Karbala? What's your feeling there? You have a spiritual high, and it's a beautiful thing. But you don't have it necessarily here. We are human beings. We're insan. Develop that relationship as much as possible. Be kind and compassionate. These are issues that we're facing. In a place like Pakistan, or for example in the Muslim community in India, for example, oftentimes in the practicing community, whereas there are also issues there, by the way, in Pakistan, many Shias, not many, few Shias, because there's an old saying that Shias don't convert to any other religion. I know personally, Shias here, born in Sayyid families, who went off to college, somebody became Christian, someone became atheist, someone became Sunni. I had never heard that before in my life, but I've seen it now. So the question I'm saying, because we as human beings have a need to fit in a group. Nobody wants to be like a fish out of water. You know fish out of water? Nobody wants to be like an alien in society. You want to fit in. So those people who, for example, became Sunni or atheist or Christian, they found an environment. What does that mean for you and I? Do you know that before people go off to university in the Christian community, especially the evangelical Christian community, not only do they get training on their belief system, what do you believe as evangelical Christians, they also give them training on how to convert other people to Christianity. You and I, we don't even give training to ours to keep your iman sometimes, let alone convert someone. It's very important to make sure these things, I'm seeing the writing on the wall and I've been seeing it for some time. You and I need to understand the most valuable thing that we have is our iman. Why? It's not just words. Why? Because it is the spring of all the good that you do in your life, the fountain of all of it. When I have that connection to Amir al-Mu'min, when I have the connection to Imam al-Hussein, when I have the connection to Rasulullah, they give me a straight, direct ticket to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the goodness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is where the heart gets that تَطْمَعِنَّ الْقُلُوبَ عَلَىٰ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَعِنَّ الْقُلُوبِ. That peace and serenity that's in the heart, that's where it comes from. Have you heard the line that you may have recited last night from Dua Kumail? Ya Noor al-Mustawhishina fi dhulam. O light of those who find themselves in darkness. If you remove Allah, there is nothing but darkness. This is what many people find themselves living in. Keep these things in mind. Keep this message tonight and tomorrow, and I have a lot to say, I'm moving on from it. Coming to the next level. The times of the Imams and their approaches at the second level. That is what? The approaches and the times of the Imams changed. I'll give you a further example. What is the further example? During the time of the 7th Imam, the 8th Imam, the 9th Imam, different approaches. 7th Imam was imprisoned. They tried to imprison him. They said that didn't work. During the time of the 8th Imam, the Abbasids took on a different approach. What did they say? They said, we'll make him the Wali al-Ahad, the crown prince, and we will make him give debates, because Greek philosophy was rising at that time. The Sufis were rising at that time. Other groups were rising. They said, look, we will make the Imam answer all of these people and he won't be able to answer them, and we'll expose that he doesn't have knowledge. But this plan backfired on the Abbasids. Because this Imam, who we call Alim Muhammad Imam al-Raba, he was not because he's all of the Ahlul Bayt are ulama, they're all alim. But this Imam had the ability to present the knowledge and make it international for people to know. Because he exposed it to the Greeks, to the people from the Byzantine Empire, and everyone, and he showed the knowledge and made it apparent. So during the time of the 8th and 9th Imam, the Abbasids wanted to expose the Ahlul Bayt and say they don't have knowledge, but it backfired on them. So what is the approach that they took during the time of the 10th and 11th Imam? They put the 10th and 11th Imam in prison. And they put them under house arrest to make sure nobody has access to them. Why is this significant? Imam Askari, who we commemorated last night, he's living in an environment where he is not by himself. He's 28 when he's martyred, 22 when he takes on the mantle of Imamat. 6 years of Imamat, that's 6 years the Imam is in prison, or under house arrest at the very minimum. In this time where the Imam is in prison for 6 years, he is facing different groups. The kings and the rulers, which are the Abbasids, and those are the Ashqal Ashqiya, the worst. The later ones were the worst of the Abbasids, although they were all bad. He had to deal with them. He had to deal with the saints, and he had to deal with the narrators. What do I mean? Imam Askari had to deal with the Abbasid rulers. He had to deal with the saints. Saints meaning the Sufi movement took off at this time. Junaid al-Baghdadi and these types of people saying Ana al-Haqq and that likes. These people said, all khair and all shar is from Allah. All good and all bad is from Allah. When the rulers heard this, they said, this is amazing. This validates everything that we're doing. If you say that good and evil is both from Allah, then if I, as the ruler, do evil on people, then that means that Allah did it. So it was very practical. So people said, use these saints and establish. By the way, some countries in the Middle East still use this methodology. Because it's very advantageous. It has nothing to do with Islam. But they're saying that the same, you'll remember the Mu'tazili and Ash'ari argument in the early period of Islam. Free will and predestination. A group said, everything's free will, everything's predestination. Another group said, the people who said, everything is the qada and qadar, the predestination of Allah, the rulers used this. Why did they use it? They said, if everything is predestined, that means that I am sitting in this seat by the will of Allah. And if you revolt and stand up against me, that means you are standing up against the will of Allah. Therefore, you are to be killed. That's why the Ahlul Bayt said the matter is al-amr bayn al-amrayn, the matter between the two matters. Some things are decreed and some things are not. That is, we have some freedom and we have some predestination. These are very important aqidah things that you and I need to know so that we can pass these on to next generations. Because remember one thing, and never forget it. You and I can do taqleed in furu-id-din. We cannot do it in usul-id-din. Furu-id-din are what? Namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, khums. These types of actions, you and I, we can say I follow Sayyid Sistani or Sayyid Khamenei or whoever your marja is, your respected marja. But when it comes to what I believe, my tawheed, adalat, nabuwat, imamat, qayamat, I have to have istidlal on myself. I can reference the books that the ulama have said and I can get an idea from there. But I cannot say to Allah, Ya Allah, I did taqleed of this marja. Although the marja has a very high position. We need to know why we believe what we believe. And what's the basis behind why we believe what we believe. Imam Askari laid this foundation. During the time of Imam Askari, Allah aligned the bloodlines. What do I mean? The wife of Imam Askari is Bibi Narjis. Bibi Narjis is that individual who Imam Hadi, the 10th Imam, made the arrangements for her to marry Imam Askari. At that point in time, the narrations say, if you go to Samarra, may Allah give us all the ziyarah of Samarra, you will find 4 graves. They're in the shrine. You will find the grave of Imam Hadi, Imam Askari, Bibi Narjis, and Bibi Hakima, the aunt of the Imam, of the 11th Imam. You will find these all there. At that point in time, the narrations say that Imam Hadi sent his servant and he said, go on the bridge. When you go on the bridge, you will see that there is a man who is selling servants. When he's selling servants, there will be one lady there who is not being bought by anyone. At that point in time, I want you to give this letter to her. When you give this letter to her, she will read the letter and she will tell the slave master or the servant master, look, I will not go with anyone except this one. Take the money that he has and go. I will go with him. At that point in time, when this happened, the Imam sent his deputy, his servant. He went there, he saw exactly the same thing. There was one lady who was not being sold to anyone, and she said, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. And then he gave the letter of the Imam to her. She read the letter, she said to the servant owner, the slave master, look, I won't go with anyone except him, whoever gave him the letter. At that point in time, the negotiation happened, she went. On the way, the discussion ensues, and Bibi Narjis is the one who goes. And she says that I have come. The person asked, how did you come here? How did you end up here? She explains the whole story. She says, I was the daughter of the Caesar of Rome. The Caesar of Rome. And I was supposed to marry onto my relative or my cousin. Question here. I was on the West Coast a few weeks ago, and a sister asked a beautiful question. The question was, why didn't Islam prohibit, make it haram for you to marry your cousin? It's a good question. Because many people growing up here say, marrying your cousin, first cousin, that's strange, first cousin, second cousin. Why would you marry your cousin? That's disgusting. That's what happened. I'm not telling you to marry your cousin, and I'm not saying against it or for it. I'm just saying something. You need to understand where do your thoughts and your ideas come from. The philosophers, they explained, you don't need to tell me your name. You don't need to tell me anything. Just tell me your zaman and makan. I will tell you your own thoughts. If you are a parent in this environment, in the West, you need to know the world that we live in, especially the last 600 years. You need to know the scientific revolution. You need to know the Renaissance. You need to know industrialization. You need to know modernity. You need to know post-modernity. You need to know, for example, what was happening in absurdism. These are different philosophical and historical movements that happened throughout history. If you don't know these, you don't know why you think the way you think. So what's the question? The question is, why did Islam not prohibit this? Now we have to look at this. Judaism, if you go to Judaism, Christianity, Islam. That's the chronology, yes? Judaism, in the Jewish law, it is not haram or not prohibited to marry your cousin. It's acceptable, you can. Now, in Islam, also you can. Now the question comes up, what changed in Christianity? You have to know the history, because if you don't know the history, you don't know where that question came from. Christianity, the original form of Christianity, is the right form of Christianity, but we don't have that form of Christianity today, because it's been changed. Changes have happened. The religion of Allah has been one religion. It's Inna Deena Indallahi al-Islam. Islam has been coming from Adam to Khatam's time, but it's taken on different forms. So when the New Testament came, the Bible, it had one view. The closest form of the Bible that we have to the original today is called the Red Letter Bible. You don't hear about it. It's very rare. The King James Bible is definitely not the Bible that was revealed. Even the Christian narrative, there are questions about who wrote the Bible. Was it Paul or somebody else? It's clear in Christianity that Jesus did not write the Bible. Why am I telling you this? Because you need to know what influence the Bible and other scriptures have had on our world. If you don't know this, you don't know what's going on. Do you know in the last election cycle, do you know why people were voting for a particular candidate who became president? They were voting because they believed in evangelical Christianity, that at the end of times, a particular group will control over the Middle East in a particular region. And you know, we go for ziyarah trips, they go for ziyarah trips to that territory. And they say this is where Jesus will come and this is what will happen. And they paint Imam Zamana as the Antichrist. Or we call Imam Mahdi as the Antichrist. But it's not, if you ask their scholars, they're saying it's a wrong interpretation. But people take on the interpretation. Keep this in mind. I'm answering the question that the sister had. What was the question? The question was this. Can you marry your cousin? If so, why? The question is not can you marry or not. The question is what changed in Christianity. This is what you need to know. Christianity was changed several times. For example, when? Constantinople. You know Istanbul? Istanbul's old name was Constantinople. When you go there, Constantine ruled over that. He wanted to unite his entire empire under one religion. You know, Akbar, the Mughal ruler, he did the same thing. He tried to make all of India under one religion, Deen Akbari or Deen Ilahi. He took elements of Hinduism and Islam and others and put it together. It lasted about 95 years and then it died out. Similarly, Constantine did the same thing. Constantine, he said, I want one form of Christianity over my religion, over my empire. And when he said this, at this point in time, the narrations say that a group came, one priest came, another priest came, and they gathered in what's called the Council of Nicaea. Council of Nicaea is what? They got everyone together and said, we want one form of Christianity. When this happened, 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed, all the fathers, the priests, they all came out and they said, look, we can't come to an agreement. Constantine said, look, there's only one choice. You come to a decision or not. Otherwise, I'll find new priests, I'll find new fathers, I'll find new people. They said, okay. They went back. The final conclusion that they came with was a compromise. Whatever a compromise is, it is not God's law. So what did they come forward? They said, we will believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Till this day, those who believe in the Trinity cannot logically explain the Trinity. They say it's based on faith. I'm not questioning our Christian friends. The Quran says you will find the closest to you the Nasara. They're not our enemies by any means. But I'm just saying, historically, how did that change happen? Similarly, in Christianity, there was a council called the Council of Agde. And when the Council of Agde happened, and other councils happened historically, what happened in Christianity was Germanic cultural influences influenced Christianity, and they said, the Germans said, look, in our culture, we don't marry our first or second cousins. Therefore, we want Christianity to be the same. So they imposed their cultural background onto the religion. I'm not telling you to marry your cousin. I'm just saying, where did the law change in that process? That's why your question comes to your mind that this is disgusting. Or this is something that I would not do. Don't do it. I'm not telling you that. In some parts of the world, you go to some places, they encourage second cousin, third cousin getting married. Now you may say, what about in first cousin marriages? About 5% they say there may be abnormalities in the child. In our world, with epigenetics, you can solve this problem very seriously. Right now I know communities who, if they want to get married, if they're from the same community, they have to do a blood test, for example, to prevent against certain diseases, or they have to do some testing. I have friends like this who have mentioned to me in this, particularly in Africa and other parts that I know of. So these issues can be solved very easily. But the question we're asking is about the law of God. You need to understand where is your thought process coming from, and if you don't understand this, you end up asking questions that are not yours. It's imposed by the society around us. They may be good questions, they may be questions that you need to stop and pause and reflect on. All questions are good. The most dangerous question is one. Always remember this. The most dangerous question is the unasked question. We must always encourage questioning. And we must always answer the questions that our youth have to their satisfaction. If we do not answer to their satisfaction, what will happen is they will begin to lose their iman, as we're seeing now. We need to make sure that wilaya that is in the hearts of many people is transferred. But remember one thing. It takes a village to raise a child. Many people, and I see this in my travels wherever I go, many people, they ask with sincerity, my child or my son, my daughter, they don't come to the Mambaga, they don't come to the Husseiniya as regularly as I want. You know, they are busy also. They have work, school, they have many things going on. But one thing that you need to remember is, if you come from, for example, Iran or Iraq or Pakistan or India, you oftentimes got a cultural environment that we didn't get here. And so you're coming from an environment where it takes a village to raise a child. And someone growing up here in this environment, they're living in a post 9/11 world. Where if you remember life before 9/11, I remember life, although I was young in America before 9/11, many of you may remember, Muslims were under the radar. After 9/11, then you had to say, oh, is this what the Quran says? Is this what you believe? And all of these issues began to ensue. One question, one opposition that people have according to non-Muslims about Muslims is, Muslims are always so serious. Muslims never celebrate. Muslims never have commemorations. The Christians have, for example, Christmas. For example, the Jews have Hanukkah. What do Muslims have? We have Eids. Does anyone mention those? One of those Eids is Eid-e-Zehra, which we are here to commemorate. There are so many things in the brief moments that we have here, and what I'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Eid-e-Zehra, which we are here to commemorate, is the culmination of numerous events and numerous things that have happened, according to the narrations and the riwayat. In one narration, even before Karbala, the narration is during the time of Rasulullah, Allama Majlisi says, that there was an individual who came forward and was in the proximity of Rasulullah. Rasulullah was with his companions. And it is the 9th of Rabiul Awwal. He is sitting with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. And at that moment there is a smile on Rasulullah's face, and he is taking food and he is giving it to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. And he says, eat and smile, for this is the day of happiness of the Ahlul Bayt. They said, Ya Rasulullah, what is this date? He says, this is the date where Allah will bring some joy to my descendants, my lineage, after some time. And this is what the narration says. Hudayfa Yamani is the person who narrates this. At that point in time, this is one narration. There's another narration, according to the traditions with respect to this. By the way, Ayatollah Bahjat, may Allah bless his soul, was asked about this. Ayatollah Bahjat was a big scholar in his own right. And he was asked, for example, what should we discuss on Eid-e-Zehra? Now, imagine, this is someone who has studied through the Hawza and Najaf, he studied in the Hawza and Qom, he's taught there for years before he passed away. He's saying, what should we discuss? He said, the best thing to discuss on Eid-e-Zehra is Fatima Zahra herself. Why? Because the people who have love of Fatima in their heart, they will become happy. And the people who have animosity and hatred towards Fatima Zahra, they will burn. You will accomplish both things in remembering Fatima Zahra at that moment in time. We will commemorate her tonight if time permits, and then tomorrow definitely, inshallah. We can never discuss her enough. That is part of our identity. At the next level, there is a narration with respect to Eid-e-Zehra that comes on the narration of Allama Majlisi on authority of Sayyid ibn Tawus. But it needs to be explained. What is that? The tradition or the hadith of Rafa al-Qalam. Rafa al-Qalam means what? The lifting of the pen. This narration is found there. Now, there is a big debate amongst the ulama and the scholars about what does this mean. Because it needs interpretation. Here's what the surface value, and then we'll analyze it. Rafa al-Qalam, they say 9th of Rabiul Awwal is the day when the pen is lifted. The pen is lifted meaning what? That is, the angels do not write your sins. This is what it says. This is the literal meaning. Some scholars say this is acceptable. Some say no. And some say no, it needs an explanation. Meaning what? It means that the pen is lifted on that day for the Shia. Shia meaning what? Because the ulama say there's a difference between Muhib and Shia. Muhib is someone who loves the Ahlul Bayt. But Shia is a higher level. Shia is Salman, Shia is Abu Dhar, Shia is Miqdad, Shia is a very high level. So then the ulama say if it's for Shia, a Shia would not even sin. So what is the point of lifting the pen? That means they would already not sin. Meaning that yes, it's true that the pen is lifted and they will not write the sins, but a Shia would not do the sins anymore. You may say, how is it possible? You know, some of our maraji, according to their own students, they never even saw them do makruh. Makruh, that's haram. Who knows what people do in privacy? I don't know, I'm not here to judge. But what I'm saying is, the people who are Salman and Abu Dhar are at the highest level. And their aqidah and their belief system is so high that you and I cannot fathom. Forget, who am I? Salman and Abu Dhar. Abu Dhar does not even know what's in the mind of Salman and the heart of Salman. Because Salman's position is too high. The poet says, and I will translate, "Ay Abu Zar dosti chalti rahe to theek hai, pooch mat lena aqida Hazrat Salman se." He says that if your friendship is continuing, Abu Dhar, if your friendship with Salman is continuing, let it continue. But don't ask him what's in his heart. Why? Because the narration says if Abu Dhar knew what was in the heart of Salman, he would want to kill him. Because he would think that that is shirk or that is, he's gone off in his iman. But Salman is on the 10th level, Abu Dhar is on the 9th level. This is the gap. The Ahlul Bayt give us these, in fact the narration say it's possible that Salman, who may have been from the awsiya of Nabi Isa, the disciples of Nabi Isa. Why? Because the one who gave him ghusl and kafan according to the narrations was Imam Ali. And a ma'soom gives ghusl and kafan to a ma'soom, number one. Number two, on top of that, this statement, this is not our aqidah, I'm just sharing this, because the love of the Ahlul Bayt, the love of Rasulullah, the love of Amir al-Mu'min, the love of Fatima al-Zahra, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, was a point of unity amongst Muslims until petrochemical dollars came to certain countries in the Middle East. What do I mean? Ibn Arabi, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, he's not Shia, he was a Spaniard from Andalus and Cordoba. He was a Sunni scholar who wrote the Bezels of Wisdom, Fusus al-Hikam. Some of the Sufis all go back to him, and some of our Urafa also go back to him. Sayyid Khomeini he was a big follower in Fusus al-Hikam. Fusus al-Hikam in Najaf is not as, they say Ibn Arabi has many views that if you don't have a teacher or a mentor, you can go down the wrong path. You need a mentor or a teacher. Nonetheless, there's a different argument. Fusus al-Hikam, he says, I saw a dream where Rasulullah opened the doors of wisdom for me. And he wrote this book, The Bezels of Wisdom. Sunni, from Andalus, from Granada, Cordoba, from Spain, from Islamic Spain. He says, not my words, and not our aqidah. He says that when Rasulullah said, Salman minna Ahlul Bayt, Salman is from us, the Ahlul Bayt, because they used to taunt him. They used to say he's from Faris, he's from Persia. And they used to say condescendingly. Remember, the Arabs had divided their world into Arab and Ajam. Arab were those who spoke Arabic. Ajam were those who did not speak Arabic. But Ajam literally meant mute, someone who could not speak. At that point in time, they would taunt and say, this is Salman al-Farisi, he's from Fars. Rasulullah said, no, Salman minna Ahlul Bayt, he's Salman Muhammadi. Ibn Arabi says, this statement of Rasulullah saying Salman minna Ahlul Bayt raises Salman to the level of Isma, Ma'soom. Not our view. For us, Ma'soom are 14. But for him, this was the position that even non-Shi'as had respect for, the statement of Rasulullah saying is from Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, when we look at Salman Abdullah, there's different levels of Iman. When we come to this, Fatima al-Zahra and her position, Eid-e-Zehra. When we come to the Rafa al-Qalam, the Shia would not sin anyways. Salman, Abadar, they would never go towards makruh, let alone haram. So Rafa al-Qalam, they say the pen is lifted. But for who? Only for those who are the true Shia, if this is to be taken on board. At the next level, there's another narration that says that this is the day when the heads reached Imam Sajjad. Imam Sajjad, now look, 61 AH is Karbala. Karbala happens 61 after Hijrah. The narration says the revolution of Mukhtar happened in 66 AH, 5 years later. When this revolution of Mukhtar happens in 5 years later, remember, 61 AH, 62 Medina pillaged, Waqat al-Harra, then Mecca on top of that, 61, 62, and on to 5 years later Mukhtar. When Mukhtar happens, the narration says that Imam Sajjad is sitting with his companions. When Imam Sajjad is sitting with his companions, he's sitting at breakfast. This is the narration. When he's sitting at breakfast, a messenger comes. He comes with a letter in one hand and a bag in the other. When he comes with a bag in one hand and a letter in the other hand, he takes the letter and he gives it to the Imam, and the bag is there. The Imam reads the letter, it's from Mukhtar. Now keep in mind, there are narrations for Mukhtar and against Mukhtar. We'll have to explain this in a moment. What does that mean? On one side, he takes the letter, he says, what's in the bag? Now, Imam knows, but he's explaining so his companions know at that point in time. The narrations say either it was the head of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, or they say there were a few heads. They say either it was the head of a few of them, Khuli, Ibn Namir, and some other people. There are different views. I'm condensing it. At that point in time, when these heads were there, or if we take Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad's head, at that point in time, the narration says the Imam smiled. Now, we need to stop here. Because the Imam is a rahmah, is part of Qaidatul Lutf. Qaidatul Lutf is the principle of grace of Allah. The imamat, the concept of imamat is a grace or a lutf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is, Allah did not need to send the imams. He sent them as a grace to us to protect the message of Rasulullah. So the imam would not be smiling at just any head. There's a wisdom here. They asked him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, why are you smiling in this way? He says, I'm smiling, according to this narration, because the dua that I had was accepted. So Ya Ibn Rasulullah, what's the dua that you had? He said, the dua that I had which was accepted was that this individual, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, When I met him, when he came into his darbar, or his court, after Karbala, the head of my father was brought before him while he was eating. And he was smiling and treating my father's head as if it was insignificant. And I did a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, the same way that he is doing this, I want justice or avenge this in this dunya. Now, can anyone avenge the killing of an Imam? No way. Because the Imam is the Imam of the whole universe. So when someone kills an Imam, they remove the grace of the Imam from the universe. The faizan of the Imam. Nonetheless, at that point in time, Allah has accepted my dua. This is what this narration says, attributed to the Imam. That Allah has accepted, that's why I'm smiling. He said, he ordered and he asked that the women of Ahlul Bayt, they have not been happy for 5 years since Karbala has happened. He says, ask them to light the stoves and to cook today. And to have some sweets. And on top of that, he said for the women to actually celebrate and wear celebratory clothes. That is, clothes of happiness. And so this day marks the changing. Now comes the question about the difference between Mukhtar's positive and negative riwayat and narrations. This is something that's very important that we need to cover. And we'll stop here and then we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. What is this? There are narrations that are for Mukhtar in our riwayat, and there are narrations against him. In fact, some people, even some scholars, they'll say this narration, and it's found in the books. I'm not saying it's authentic or not, I'm just saying it's found there. The narration says that when the head was brought, Mukhtar sent the head when the head was brought before Imam Sajjad. Sajjad said, who told him to do this? This narration is found. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Allow me to explain. There are narrations that are for him and against him. We need to understand this by understanding another companion, Zurara. Zurara ibn Ayun. Zurara was a companion of the 6th Imam during the time of the 6th Imam Sadiq. Zurara, non-Shias, the Sunni community, they taunt the Shias and they say, you don't even know your own belief system. You revere Zurara and you say Zurara has a very high position, whereas your own Imam, your 6th Imam, he says public statements against Zurara. You're praising him and your Imam is condemning him. And our narrations say that yes, this happened publicly. So what's the answer? Many years later, the son of Zurara went to Imam Sajjad and he said, Yabna Rasulillah, to the 6th Imam. He said, Yabna Rasulillah, the people taunt me and they say to me that your father did this and that because Imam Sadiq gave the statement against my father. Was my father good or was he bad? Tell me, what's the situation? Can you please explain? Because people taunt me. Imam Sadiq said, I did for your father what Khidr did with Musa in the boat. So what do you mean Khidr and Musa in the boat? In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the story of Musa and Khidr. And at that point in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa to go find someone who is more knowledgeable, where the two seeds meet. وَوَجَدَكَ عَبْدًا مِّنْ عِبَادِنَا. Allah told him to go find someone. And he went and found Khidr, who's still alive till this day. And Khidr went on this journey. And he said, you will not have patience with me. And there's a lot of wisdom in here. Because Musa is a prophet. And at that point in time, when Khidr is there, Khidr is telling a prophet that you will not have patience. He's telling him about ilm al-ghayb, you won't have patience with me. There's another issue in here also. That Musa is a prophet. How did he say one thing and not act on it? He said, I'll have patience. He didn't have patience the first time. Then the second time, then the third time. We'll have to explain this another time. But keep these, there's a lot of wisdom within this. Not to mention, Surah Al-Kahf, where this Musa and Khidr story is found, is also the chapter or the verses of the chapter which Imam Hussein was reciting on the spear. Am hasibta anna ashab al-kahfi wa rakim kanu min ayatina ajaba of Surah Al-Kahf. There's wisdom as to why. Nonetheless, Imam Sadiq says, I did for Zurara, your father, what Musa and Khidr, what Khidr did for the boat. So what happened? At that point in time, when, according to the narrations, when Khidr told Musa, you won't have patience, Musa said, please let me go with you. He said, okay, fine. They went. When they saw a boat, Khidr took a perfectly fine boat and he drilled a hole in it. And then Musa objected. He said, how did you drill a hole in this? He said, did I tell you won't have patience? Then they went further. And then there was a youth, for example, and he killed the youth. He said, you killed the youth, how can you do this? He said, did I tell you will not have patience? They moved on. They got to a city or a town, and the people were not good to them. He fixed the wall. At that point in time, Musa says, look, you fixed their wall. They weren't even nice to us and hospitable to us. Why? At that point in time, he says, هَذَا فِرَاقٌ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is where I go my way, you go your way, and I'll explain everything. And he said, look, that boat that was there was a ruler who was taking over all of the boats. I put a hole so that the ruler sees this and he doesn't take the boat. But the owner of the boat, they can fix it and patch it up very easily. He says, Imam Sadiq says to Zurara, son, I did the same thing with your father Zurara. If I publicly encouraged him and publicly said positive things about him, the rulers of the time, Banu Umayyah and the likes, they would have killed your father. So behind the scenes, he was doing the right thing and I was in support of him. Those statements were in taqiyya, according to what the ulama say. Now, keep this in mind. The story is not complete yet. No one get up. No one get up. Otherwise you'll get the wrong conclusion. At that point in time, now come back to the time of what we were explaining. When the issue came of Mukhtar, were those statements that are positive and negative, you find both, were the negative statements in taqiyya or were the positive statements in taqiyya? This is something we have to look at. Sayyid Khui, Ayatullah Khui, may Allah bless his soul, is one of the marjas of the 20th century, which was the biggest grand marjas. And he did with fiqh, which some scholars say that many people have not done. And he was a unique marja. Before Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid Khui in Najaf. Sayyid Khui analyzed this. And he said, look, a imam, if he's saying a statement of taqiyya, the same way Imam Sajjad did, the statement when the head is brought before Imam Sajjad, and Imam Sajjad smiles, and he says, according to this narration, when the head came in front of Ibn Ziyad to Imam Sajjad, he said, ask Mukhtar, when will he send the head of Hurmala bin Kahil, the one who killed Ali ibn al-Asghar. He said, when will he send that head? If this statement is true, that means the Imam would never tell Mukhtar to do something, even in taqiyya, that is haram. That means the negative statements against Mukhtar and taqiyya, the ones that are in support, are the true statements. Because the Imam could never tell him that, oh, go, even in taqiyya, go and send the positive head. Go and send someone's head to me. The Imam would never do this. That means, based on this, that what Mukhtar did, his uprising, was positive and the Imam supported. To the extent that the Ahlul Bayt said, may Allah have mercy on Mukhtar, because of him, the women of the Ahlul Bayt had some joy in their life for some moments in time. Therefore, when we read the narrations, there's no two ways about it. We need to understand that Mukhtar's rising was a positive rising, and he's someone who's blessed according to the Ahlul Bayt. Nonetheless, these are some points to discuss. There's much more to discuss, but we've already capped our time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this holy gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to see the reappearance of the Imam of our time, to hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. Ya Allah, anyone who's suffering from any illness, either physical or otherwise, COVID or otherwise, Ya Allah, grant them alleviation from the difficulty. Ya Allah, anyone who has a financial difficulty, grant them alleviation from their financial difficulty in this night. And Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al Zaman and allow us to be on this grand news or return. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي بالفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا قصة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وأنيس النفوس، أيها المدفون بأرض الطوس الراضي بالقدر والقضاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأس والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في
Karar, especially for the Zarini Imam Hussain Saduslam and the Shiani of Afghanistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'u wa yakshifu as-su'. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Please recite one time Surah Fatiha to three times of Ramadan for the Shuhada of Afghanistan and legal Shuhada in the Jafariya and especially the Buzurgan for the Hazin Majlis. Please Surah Al-Mubarakatul Fatiha.
Nare Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Nare Salat.
Ya Rasulullah.
Nare Naidari.
Ya Ali.
Farai Zuhuri Imam Zaman for Khudo Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala
لبيك يا مهدي
لبيك يا مهدي.
لبيك يا مهدي
لبيك يا مهدي.
لبيك يا مهدي
لبيك يا مهدي.
محمد آل محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
salli ala
Al-Qur'an.